to talk to you about my 5 most controversial knitting opinions. I'm heading out of town, and so for the next 2 weeks, there won't be any new videos here. Maybe some shorts will pop up, but I am going to Peru, and while I would like to be the kind of person that gets my videos done ahead of time to post and schedule, I'm not. So I don't have content for those 2 weeks, so I will be missing for a little bit, and I thought before I left I'd share a controversial video to keep everyone talking in my absence. So in the meantime, if you are watching this, and I am on vacation, hiatus, be sure to follow me on Instagram so you can keep up with what I am doing. Again, I will be in Peru and probably be sharing a lot of content from there. But the point of this video is to talk about my most controversial knitting opinions. The first thing I'll say is that these are opinions. They're not judgments of, people who maybe like these things or whatever the case may be. They're just my opinions. Take them for what they are. You are entitled to disagree with them. I am sure many people will. So we'll just have a little fun and share. A quick note before we get started, it is opening day, which is where I am wearing this Orioles t-shirt. I know that it doesn't go with my sweater, but let's face it, not a lot of stuff goes with bright orange. Other than Orioles stuff, I don't wear bright orange. So it wouldn't make a whole lot of sense to purchase or create coordinating clothing to match my Orioles gear. So yes, I know I don't match. So let's kick things off with number 5, which is I don't get machine knitting. Like, I've been seeing a lot of videos of people with the little round knitting machines and the hand crank. I don't like, hand cranking to wind my yarn. So why would I enjoy sitting and hand cranking to knit something? I understand like the speed factor, but then you may as well just go buy whatever it is that you want. Again, this is just my opinion. I just don't get it. Part of the joy of knitting is the actual, knitting with your hands and feeling the yarn and making decisions on the needles about what's going to happen where, what maybe you're going to change. And I feel like a lot of that is taken out of a process that is literally just cranking a hand winder. So I don't get machine knitting. I personally don't consider it to be equivalent to hand knitting. Yeah, it's a mystery to me. What's the deal? Okay, number 4. Now I know I have mentioned before that I don't like acrylic yarn, but this isn't really beyond not liking it. This is my opinion that acrylic yarn, regardless of other things that you might use it for, shouldn't be used for sweaters. It doesn't block the same way that wool does. It doesn't breathe the same way that wool does. Now maybe you have an acrylic blend, which is sort of a different thing, but a sweater knit entirely from acrylic, I think it's a bad idea. Acrylic, as I also said in that video, certainly might have some uses, particularly with things like toys if you knit those, but I don't think it's a good choice for sweaters. It doesn't mean you have to use wool. Cotton is a great choice. Linen can be a good choice. Various wool blends can be a good choice, but acrylic is not a good match for sweaters. The sweater creation process and sweater patterns are generally based on using a animal or plant fiber, depending on the pattern, that behaves in a certain way, and acrylic just doesn't. You're going to overheat. Your sweater's going to look crumply because of the blocking issue. That's number 4. Acrylic, maybe it has its uses, but it shouldn't be for sweaters. Acrylic plus sweaters, no. Number 3, merino cashmere nylon yarn is beautiful, but it's actually not great for most projects. It's very soft and it feels very luxurious, but it simply doesn't wear well. Especially for socks. You see a lot of merino cashmere nylon sock yarn, and it's actually, I will go ahead and say, terrible to knit socks with merino cashmere nylon. And I'm gonna stop saying that. I'm gonna start saying MCN just because it's kind of a mouthful. The cashmere doesn't wear well. It pills. It just doesn't hold up well for any kind of project that's going to get a lot of wear. So shawls, maybe. Socks, definitely not. Sweaters, it's not great. Cashmere is a very soft fiber, but it's not a very sturdy one. And part of the problem with, it's blended with merino, which is also very soft, but the spinning processes that work well for the merino aren't as compatible with the cashmere. So the cashmere ends up pilling much more than the merino, which also, does have a tendency to pill on its own. Blending them together, while you're getting a little bit of that extra softness from the cashmere, and you would think that you're getting the extra sturdiness from the merino, mostly what ends up happening is that the cashmere pills much more quickly and eventually just kind of fall out of whatever you're wearing as you depill it and maybe sweater shave it or gleaner it or whatever. You're basically removing that cashmere, and then you're left with merino and nylon, but the remaining spin in your yarn was put in there based on the fact that there was 10% more fiber than there is now. So ultimately you end up with a yarn that is not sturdy, despite having, the merino in there that is supposed to add sort of the sturdiness to the cashmere. So merino cashmere nylon yarn, beautiful, not great for most projects. It's just not sturdy enough. And the way that the cashmere wears away gradually, but at a much faster rate than the merino, actually ends up with a less sturdy yarn overall. So shawls, it's nice, you're wearing them around your neck, but they're not getting a lot of exposure to thinking about not like sleeves of a sweater rubbing against the side of your body, or socks, or the shawl's not getting a lot of wear and tear the way that other garments might be. So really, shawls are probably the best choice for your MCN yarns. But overall, I gotta say, my opinion, MCN yarn, not great for most projects. Speaking of shawls, that is going to bring us to my second most controversial opinion, which is that shawls are overrated. They can be fun to knit. Most of the fun is in the knitting. And then you have a shawl and not a whole lot of use for it. Again, maybe this is just my experience. I have certainly knit some shawls over time that I have loved, but ultimately I don't find them very useful as a finished object. They can be fun to knit, although they also tend to get very repetitive as they get bigger and bigger. But so the lacy, airy ones really aren't giving you a lot of warmth, while they look nice. There's sort of, maybe just here in Maryland, a very small window of time where the weather is cool enough that I would want a very light wool layer like a shawl, but nothing heavier and nothing lighter. When you try to wear them under coats, again, they don't provide a whole lot of warmth, but they also tend to just like get bunched up, and maybe that, again, maybe it's just me and I'm not good at wearing shawls, but they tend to get smushed by your coat, then they start unwinding. A lot of the shawl patterns available now are all about like mixing colors and brioche and stripes and all kinds of fun details that, again, are fun to knit, but then ultimately it's really hard to find something that your shawl coordinates with. I say this, I wear my non-matching clothes here, because you've got so many colors going on. So the shawls that I wear the most are heavier. They're more like a scarf. I mean, they're still shawl shaped, like a triangle shape, but they're heavier so that they, you know, when I put them around my neck, they kind of stay put, or if I put them around my shoulders, they kind of stay put. They're actually giving me a pretty good deal of warmth, so that they're usually not knit in a fingering weight or even a lace weight. They're usually shawls that I've knit with a heavier weight yarn. And are really sort of more straightforward. They're not super vibrant colors and variegated yarns and crazy stitch patterns. You know, there may be some cables, there's some low contrast brioche, you know, kind of neutral colors, super like light and lacy or super colorful busy shawls. I just don't find a lot of use for them. So most of the fun there is in the knitting, and then they just end up sitting around, which seems kind of wasteful. So there you go. That's number 2. Shawls are kind of overrated. Not as a project to work on, but as an actual garment to wear. And number 1, my most controversial knitting opinion, probably not the most controversial knitting opinion I am willing to share in public to perhaps draw ridicule but not shame. Colorwork yoke sweaters and circular yoke sweaters in general usually don't fit well on almost anybody. And I have knit a few, and I have even designed a few. But overall, just the construction of a colorwork yoke sweater doesn't really match the way the human body is shaped. So a colorwork yoke sweater goes like this. And the human body goes like that. So what you're doing is, depending on your shoulders, to sort of even things out between the actual shape, which is like a cone, and your shape, which is not really a cone. And the result is not flattering for most people and not comfortable. So yeah, they look nice and they are fun to knit sometimes, but in general, they don't fit well. If, you know, unless your shoulders are the perfect width, you know, if your shoulders are too narrow, you end up with bunching. If your shoulders are too wide, you end up with a really stretched out yoke that doesn't look good. A lot of colorwork yoke sweaters don't really have any neck shaping to lower the front and raise the back. So you just end up with the neck that is a crew neck, kind of, that keeps riding up into your neck. It's really hard to get the yoke depth right for a colorwork sweater, because again, what you're depending on is the shoulders to stretch things out correctly. And if they don't, because, you know, your shoulders are not the exact average for your body size in general, and again, sweaters are generally designed based on a set of standard body measurements from the Craft Yarn Council, is probably the most accessible and widely known one. But if your shoulders are not stretching the yoke out enough or stretching it out too much, then the yoke depth is going to be off. Like I said, I have designed a few. I don't wear them myself. I don't find them to be comfortable, and I don't find them to be flattering either. So I know that there are a lot of people out there that love knitting and love designing colorwork yoke sweaters, and good for them. But my personal opinion, again, is that colorwork and circular yoke sweaters in general are not flattering and are ill-fitting for most people, simply because they have a very minimal relation to the way the actual human body is shaped. All right, so there you have it, my 5 most controversial knitting opinions that I'm willing to share in public. Please do leave a comment and let me know what you think. As I said, these are just my opinions, and of course, we are not all going to agree on everything. Again, I will be on hiatus for the next 2 weeks. There's plenty of other content here for you to check out. There are tutorials, there are other vlogs, there are podcast episodes, and be sure you are following me on Instagram if you want to see pictures from Peru, and particularly Cusco, where all of the llamas and alpacas live, and all the weaving and knitting and spinning and dyeing go on, because I will hopefully be visiting a lot of those kinds of places while I am there. If you enjoyed this video, I hope you will give it a thumbs up. Please do subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future content, and I will see you back here later in April.